Okay, we're getting people signing on right and left here now.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, yeah, somebody said, are we supposed to hear Greg on one side and Walter on the other? Yes, that's correct. And someday when we have a thoroughly rigged $1 million sound system, you'll be able to hear it in stereo, but tough beans.
If I let my computer, I could try sending my webcam to you or two. But
so somebody says there's no Greg, but I think everybody else can hear Greg. So if there's one person that can't hear Greg, then I think it would be the problem with that one person.
Hit refresh or play on the player.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys should be good, and we're going to start here like now. So I'm going to read to you guys what. All right. So just to be clear now, you all, you should be hearing me and seeing me. And okay, I'm going to go ahead and read, Walter, we're doing an experimental deal here, by the way, that we're going to be doing more and more, and this is going to be very useful in coach training. So what we're going to do is we'll have people call in more and more often. I'm going to be sending out emails asking for, let's do this. You know how you guys send me your emails ahead of time with questions, which is very helpful. And then what I'm going to do is when people send me questions, I'm going to be calling certain of you who send me in questions, as I'm doing tonight. Walter sent me a question. And I'm going to say, would you be willing to do this live? And then what I do is, using the Skype headphone here, then I'm going to conduct a conversation with anywhere from 1 to 2 or 3 of you live, so that the rest of you can hear the conversation, so that you can hear the back and forth, which should be much more useful than me simply reading a question and giving a monologue, which is, has its uses, but much more useful when you can hear the back and forth between myself and the other person. Way more fun for me too. So Walter says this. I know that I'm acting immature and being an idiot and acting like a victim, which is stunning honesty right off the bat. And any number of negatives I could and probably do call myself to kick myself in the ass for my failure to do other than what I am. So feeling rather without value, what can I do? I make phone calls and state what's wrong with myself and what I am doing, and the other person on the end of the line lets me blab. I go away and still feel empty. I don't know how to feel loved, I would say. I'm too needy and I feel like giving up. It's not as bad as it was 2 weeks ago when I drove through a stop sign, got a ticket, and wanted to shoot myself, which is, pretty much of a low. But I see how immature I am. It's just that I feel sad about finding out how careless and useless I am, and frustrated that I feel that I would be better off without life. So a pretty poignant question, and a question that would be, I would say, pretty difficult for most wise men and women to deal with. And so I thought it would be really useful for us to talk about this. So Walter, thanks for doing this. When you talk to people on the phone, and as you say here, you talk about being immature and acting like an idiot and acting like a victim and so on, and like you say here, you talk to people on the phone and the person on the other end of the line lets you blab. What do you mean by that? What do they say?
Well, sometimes I turn around and listen to them, and that at least gives me some validation there. But I mean, I say I'm feeling down. I don't know what to do. I've got this problem and all. And sometimes they'll say, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, listen to me." And I don't know what else to ask for. I say I want to feel better, but how do I feel better when I feel like such a shit? And all I can do is state what I'm feeling and what's going on with me and what problem I'm having, but it doesn't seem to make it any different, except for what it is.
Okay, I got that part. So, but what do they say to you in response?
I mean, they'll ask me and what else is going on, or what else is listed, or what other things are going. I'm having trouble right now trying to think of anything that they say to me, because it really doesn't hit me, I guess.
I guess it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick then.
Right.
All right. So give me an example of when you say you act immature and you're an idiot and act like a victim. Give me an example or two.
Well, like I said, I drove through a stop sign without just drove right through it. I looked forward and back and said, drove right on through it without even stopping, and got a ticket. And then I said, okay, let me go and pay this. And I went to the city hall, and they said, well, we can't pay this for 2 weeks. And I said, well, here's my money. It's going to be $120 here. Take $200. Take the money. And then I said, we can't do this. Come back in 2 weeks. And just trying to be with people is hard enough for me most of the time, because it just feels frustrating to try and relate to them. And so I'll just go off and be myself and be with my little victimhood and say, like, okay, I'd rather be safe and apart from everybody else, and just dealing with my own anger of what's going on in my life, and that I can't seem to get anything going with my life or get anything worked out, and feel so disconnected from everyone else in life that it's just like, well, why? I mean, if I get connected with people, I'm just going to act like a victim. I'm just going to be as frustrated as I am trying to connect with them, and even if I do connect with them, I'll still be doing praise, pleasure, power, safety, all the rest of that. And it's just, I'm just frustrated with trying to be with people and not knowing how, and then half the time that I feel like I'm doing it wrong.
So now you have said a lot. So when you're with people, you don't know how to respond to them. You don't know what to say with them. You act like a victim. You feel uncomfortable with them. You feel like a social retard.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And you are. You are socially retarded.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Not in the least, but I can accept the fact that I'm a social retard.
Yeah. You don't know what to say to people. When you're around them, you get frustrated. You don't know what to say. You didn't know what to say to the lady when she said, come back in 2 weeks. You act like a victim a lot. Now, where did you learn that?
Well, everywhere.
How many times, when you were a little kid, how often did your parents sit down with you and instruct you, give you classes, sit with you in their lap, and teach you how to relate to other people? How often did they do that?
Never.
And so, what chance in hell did you stand of learning how to interact with other people?
Probably, I would say none, and it's really frustrating. I mean, heck, I've even taken the Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People, and that was like the worst class I ever went to.
Because
and
why was it the worst?
Well, it felt horrible when they give me the award for the most improved, and I go away, and I have a nice little certificate that sits on my shelf that says, look, I did great at this course, and I'm totally ambivalent about using any of it because I feel like I'm being a total liar to try and do these actions and trying to make myself look good and just feeling like an even worse social retard because, look, I learned the skills and I'm not using them because it feels like if I use them, I'm being a liar.
You would be a liar because they're just skills. Because in dealing with human beings, what do people want most?
I know the words, and I know it's real love, but it still feels like everybody wants imitation love, because when I give them imitation love, they seem to give me some sort of feedback, and when I give them real love, they leave, or they ignore me, or it doesn't seem to connect.
Well, what people want most is to be cared about unconditionally. And if you haven't been cared about unconditionally, and you don't even know what it feels like, what are the chances that you'd be able to give genuine unconditional love to somebody else?
Zero.
Zero. None. And the instant you're with somebody else and you feel like a victim and you feel uncomfortable and you feel afraid, in fact, the instant you feel uncomfortable, another word for uncomfortable is?
Afraid.
Afraid. So,
and I feel afraid a lot of the time.
Yeah, you do. And the instant you feel afraid, you're already earning imitation love, right?
Okay.
Do you understand that?
The moment that I'm afraid, the moment that I'm uncomfortable, afraid, I'm already earning imitation love.
Mm-hmm. Because if you're afraid, you're already protecting yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So the instant you're afraid, you can't be feeling real love. You can't be feeling unconditional love. And it's a cycle that just goes on and on and on. So what's the solution? Trusting somebody for no reason, long enough that they really care about you. And letting it in that they do for no reason. None. Now, it's really important that you hear what I said to you earlier, which is, yeah, you are a victim. Yes, you do act stupidly around other people. Yes, you are a social retard, which are characteristics that you were taught to be. They are not you. Do you understand what I'm saying?
It's hard.
They're not you. They're what you have learned to do. You don't even know who you are. Does that make sense at all?
It's hard. I mean, yeah. I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am.
You couldn't. If I come up behind you and I wrap my hands around your throat and I choke you, begin to choke the air out of you, how will you behave? Crazily, won't you?
Right.
You'll kick, you'll thrash, and if in that moment, in the moment that I'm choking you, we film you, and we send that film out to 100 people and say, this is Walter. Well, how will they characterize you? As insane. Well, that's not you. That's just how you behave while you're being choked. Making sense so far?
Yes.
And how you behave now is how you behave while the life is being choked out of you, while you don't feel loved. In other words, you don't even know who you really are. When you get loved enough, you'll figure it out. So when you say, sometimes I wonder if I'd be better off without life, yeah, I'll bet you do. And when you get loved enough, you're going to figure out what life is. So during this conversation, this one, just all you got right now is this conversation, right?
Right.
Who cares about the past? During this conversation, we've identified that you're not very good with people. During this conversation, we've identified that you're probably not going to unconditionally love me because you don't know how. You're probably not going to be clever and give me a pile of imitation love, right? And yet, here we are still talking. In other words, in this conversation, all I care about is who?
I would guess me. It's hard to believe, but I would guess me.
Almost sounded painful for you to say.
Well, it's hard to believe half the time.
I know. What I'm telling you is I don't need you to be anything. Nothing. Because all those things you described, victim, immature, are not you. You're just in pain. That's all. Following this?
What was that?
Are you following this?
Am I whatting this?
Following. Sorry. Is it?
It makes a little sense, but still rather hard to grasp.
It is hard to grasp because it's an entirely different world from the way you've lived. So what I'm going to recommend that you do is you and I will talk again.
Okay.
So you and I will talk again tomorrow. Okay?
Okay.
And we're going to hang up now. And I want you to continue to watch our discussion as we talk about this discussion. And then you and I will talk again tomorrow and continue this one. Okay?
Okay.
All right. This is just a start. That's all. And then you might kind of watch some of the comments that people have made to you during the chat as we've spoken. Okay?
Okay.
People have actually made quite a few comments to you. You probably left your screen on, I hope.
No, I'm not watching the screen right now.
But did you leave your screen on?
No, I did not.
That's all right. That's all right. I'm gonna paste it and send it to you. How's that?
That would be very helpful.
Good. I'll paste it and send it to you, and you and I will talk tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. Love you, buddy, and we'll keep going. This is just a beginning.
Okay. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye now. Thanks for that. Tell them to wait? Okay. They don't need to refresh though, right? Nope. Okay. Oh, okay. So the idea is that we need to love people where they are. And we tend to, when people are in pain, because you may have noticed that Walter's in a lot of pain, because he's talked about dying. We tend to avoid talking about what they are. He said, you know, I'm immature, I'm a loser, yeah, your life sucks. And we've got to talk about that and not just avoid it or go, or nod our heads, or people need to hear that we got it, or they can't feel loved. They really can't. Anyway, what Walter just did was very cool. Let me see if I missed stuff. Okay, I'm going to get to some other questions here, but I just want to be sure I didn't miss anything that you all contributed. All right. John was saying that he remembered the first conversation I had with him. He said he felt like the world was gone. There was only gray. He always saw black and white. Your first encounter with real love can be very disorienting. It's really like seeing everything differently. Somebody else said, what prevents people from receiving the unconditional love that we give to them freely? If you've never seen anything like it before, the first time that you see it, it's like, what was that? It doesn't even make sense to you. It doesn't. In fact, most people who receive unconditional love the first time convert it to imitation love. That's what they do. They will then immediately do something to earn it from you. They will. That's all they know to do. Let's see. Oh, somebody said, wasn't it a bit harsh to call Walter retarded? Or could we have used a more gentle term? It's actually very important to refer to people in the harshest, accurate term. Why? Because until we love people for who they really are, they're going to always feel like this. Yeah, you say you love me, but if you knew who I really was, the worst of me, you wouldn't. And so you have to love them at their worst, as long as it's accurate. And so, like Mike was writing here, what does retarded mean? Less advanced in mental, physical, or social development than is usual for one's age. And let me tell you, honey, it's retarded. See, when we hear the word retarded all of our lives, we've heard it with attitude. We've heard it like this. You're retarded. And so we've heard it in terms of you're not worthwhile. And I didn't spend any time, darn it, and I should have. That was my fault. Notice the rest of what Walter said. That is, he said, not only am I retarded or, you know, an idiot or so on, because all that's true. Aren't we idiots? I'm an idiot every day. I was an idiot actually more than once today. You could hear the stories, but you can call pretty much Mike and Donna any day and you can hear the idiot stories. But notice what he said was, I was an idiot, blah, 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 and I'm without value. That's the part that's not true. We're idiots all the time. We're foolish all the time. We're stupid all the time. We're retarded all the time. But are we without value? No. Are we worthless? No. Are we bad? No. Are we unlovable? No. But are we stupid? Yeah. In fact, we use that in in our house all the time. I use it in counseling with people all the time. Are you stupid? Yes. When you went through the stop sign, was that stupid? Yes. And people say, well, no, it wasn't really stupid. Well, let me think now. If stopping for the stop sign is smart, then not stopping for the stop sign would be, let me think, stupid. I mean, come on. You can either get a fine for $125 or not. Getting a fine for $125 would be stupid. But it doesn't make us worthless. No, it's just stupid. And you're still lovable. And that's the part we didn't get all of our lives. When we made mistakes, we were worthless and bad. That's the part we miss. Now, Lynn asked me a question. I think Lynn's on. Let me look over here. Lynn, yep, Lynn's on. And I wanted to get to her question. In fact, Lynn's here for the first time. She said she and somebody else had a question about anger, spite, and so on being unloving and workable only on the field of death. She said, given that understanding, is it unloving to stand up to an abusive person and calmly say that they are not allowed to talk to you that way? I'm torn between thoughts on the subject, to which is more loving, to allow such language and simply walk away, or request change or an apology. I can tell you that using loving manners won't work, especially if you touch that person. You're likely to get either hit or shoved with violent intent, even if the abuser is only in the emotional category. Mind you, I'm not talking about normal selfish problems in relationships. I mean real abuse from dark minds that see no love in anything. Okay, it's almost never effective to request an apology because you're asking somebody to change their behavior. We don't really have the right to do that. You don't really have the right to tell somebody to stop their behavior. Again, you're asking them to change. When somebody comes at you and says you are stupid, you are whatever, listen to them is the first thing. Listen, because usually they're trying to tell you something. Say, well, so tell me more. Whatever part of whatever they're telling you, if half of it's right, say, you know, you're right about that. So tell me some more about that, which is something I need to constantly be doing better about. A man wrote me just the other day and said that he had been in a men's conference, and a man attacked him during the men's conference. He was teaching about real love, and all he did was not defend himself and listen. And the man who was attacking stopped attacking, started listening, and became a defender of real love. If we stay off the field of death, most of the time, people will start listening and quit attacking. If it continues, you don't tell them to stop. What you can do is tell them what you will do. Now, what can you tell them? If they're really ugly, you can tell them what you will do. You can say, for example, you know, I'm not feeling very good. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling kind of spent. And so I need to go for a walk. In whatever way you choose to tell them, you tell them that you're leaving. You're leaving the situation. And then you need to do that. If it persists for, you know, a lifetime, you may have to tell them you're getting a divorce. You may have to tell them you're leaving the relationship. But you tell people who are continually abusive to the point where you feel like it's affecting your emotional or mental health, you tell them what you are going to do. You don't tell them what they need to do. People don't like being told that you're taking away from them their right to choose. If they're really hateful, in order to protect yourself, if you're feeling sufficiently unsafe, rather than tell them what you're going to do, you simply do it. You simply leave. If somebody's going to hit you, for example, you don't need to waste the time of saying, if you're going to hit me, I'm going to leave. You just leave. If you're in a situation, for example, where a husband you feel like is going to become abusive, like an alcoholic husband, where you can feel the tension building and this has happened before, and you feel like you're going to be hit, you don't give him a forewarning. Get out of the house. And if this is happening repeatedly, get out of his life. Leave. Get safe. I mean, when I talk about real love and I talk about where love is the most powerful force on the planet, and it really is, I've seen love bring an absolute end to contention. I've walked into prisons where the room was filled with prisoners and had them all just spitting venom at me, and seen the room completely calmed as I loved them. Really. Where the warden said to me, as we walked into the, I don't have my watch with me, but as I walked into the room to deliver a seminar, where the warden held up his watch and went, good luck, we have a bet that you won't last longer than 15 minutes. And 3 hours later, they were all weeping. So real love is that powerful. So people say, well, it really doesn't work with people who have really dark personalities. Well, I was in a room with 150 prisoners. How dark do you want it? Real love is that powerful. But if you feel unsafe yourself, get out. You don't need to be where you can't handle the situation. You don't. And then this person continues. I watched your webcast on the verbal abuser. Go to the website. Go through the webcast. They're all indexed. And she says, I tried those things, touching, asking, all these things. And then she said it didn't work. He got worse. The more light I received, the more light she became, the darker he got. And then eventually he left her. Well, it doesn't always work. You're right. I'm just saying to people, always try real love first. And if it doesn't work, well then, what did you lose? Because if you always try real love first, guess who's always happier? You. And if it doesn't help the other person, well, too bad for them. But it will always work for you. Every time it will work for you. That's a guarantee. Love really melts monsters. It does. That's, somebody else wrote that up here. I've read that somewhere. It's just astonishingly effective. Let's see here. Hear people still talking about how much they admire Walter. I mean, it's a very cool thing what Walter did for us. That's just very brave what he did. Let's see. Wanted to get a question that somebody sent me here. Here's one that was sent about some kids. A week ago, I was taking the kids somewhere in the car. David, the 6-year-old, had done something to receive a consequence of losing time playing video games, and he was upset. Jacob, 8, who likes to make faces in the rearview mirror and dance in his seat, I don't know how you dance in your seat, I guess on your butt, was doing just that. David, the 6-year-old, was empty, so here's David, and Jacob's movements were annoying him, of course. I said to David, Jacob's not making any noise, and he's not doing anything to you, so I'm not going to make him stop. David kept whining and complaining about it, which was inconveniencing me as I was driving. I told him if he kept on, he would lose more time. He did, of course, and lost 30 more minutes. Oh, I can just see the penalties rolling up. Jacob returned to making faces and wiggling. More whining from David, who complained, he's just doing that to make me lose more time on the computer. That stopped me dead in my tracks. I was shocked that Jacob had been so clever and tricky. So I looked at Jacob and said, is this true? From the look on his face, it was. He confirmed that it was true. So I took 30 minutes of game time away from Jacob and returned it back to David. This is getting complicated. And told Jake to stop making faces. How could I have handled this better? It was suggested to me that I could have said, Jacob, you would have lost an hour of playing time, but because you told the truth, you only lose half an hour. Is this making you insane? But I think the whole thing could have been handled differently. I'm just not sure how. I want to encourage Jacob to continue telling the truth, but I want to discourage the manipulations. You got to make things simpler. So let's go with simpler principles. If you make things too complicated, it becomes tortuous. So let's make it simpler. The one kid was not making noise and not doing anything to hurt the other child. So leave him alone. It doesn't matter whether he has this ulterior motive to bother the other kid. Because, why? You got to follow principles. You have to teach children principles and not get caught up in the details, or you are dead. Look at this. 30 minutes here and add it to this kid because he did it for this reason, and then 30 minutes on top of this. I mean, holy smoke, you'd have to be a lawyer to sort this out with these two kids. They can make you crazy. What's the principle? You can't make a child be loving. And that's what you were trying to do with Jacob, the one who was dancing in his seat and teasing his brother. I get it that he was teasing his brother. Is that wrong? Yes. But you can never apply a consequence to make somebody be loving. Get this? You can apply a consequence for a child who is responsible for a task. You assign a task, and if the task isn't done, there's an assigned consequence. For responsibility, you can assign a consequence. You can't make a child be loving. No, you teach a child to be loving by your loving example. Period. That's all you got. You can apply consequences for a child affecting your driving. Because, see, that's responsibility. And that's what David was doing by whining. But you have to be really careful not to be too touchy. Or what the child learns is, because you're the big, powerful adult, you can hand out consequences whenever you want to. I used to run a bunch of Boy Scouts, and there were like 30 kids, and we used to take them on a school bus. And there was just me that ran the entire Boy Scout group. Do you know why? Because occasionally I would have an adult come and help me. The adults are the ones that drove me crazy. We would have the adults on the bus or in the activities, and the adults were always complaining, well, those kids are making too much noise, and they would want to put consequences on the boys for making too much noise. And I'm going, oh, you mean for acting their age? You have to be really careful before you apply consequences to children for, like, making noise, whining, acting like babies, because guess what? They are. So you apply consequences to teach children to be responsible, not for being unloving and acting immature, because they are immature. So what do you do when Jacob is bouncing around and making faces and being a little snothead to his brother? You pull the car over into a parking lot. That's what you do. You pull the car right over, park the car, have him unbuckle his seatbelt, pull over under a tree, and you have a little conversation with him about love. You love and teach. And you say, so do you like it when I'm nice to you? Yeah. Do you like it when I hug you and I'm sweet to you and I'm kind to you and I speak gently to you and I don't tease you? Yeah. Would you like it if I made faces at you and I made fun of you and I bounced around in front of you and I made you feel bad? Would you like that? No. He's not stupid. He knows where this is going. So, do you think it's nice that you do that to your brother? No. You're done. That's the end of the lesson. Thus endeth the lesson. You do not need to say, don't. You do not need to say, stop it. We don't trust our children that they're not complete mental rejects. Teach him the lesson and let it percolate in his head. Trust our children that they know right from wrong. Teach him, then get back in the car, no irritation, and drive on. Now, if 5 minutes later he starts doing it again, you know what you do? You pull over, unbuckle his seatbelt, and teach him the lesson again. That's what loving and teaching is. Welcome to life as a parent, sweetie. Now, what do you do if David is annoyed by Jacob's bouncing and stuff? You learn to be a better parent. You learn to exercise options. Being a parent is work. Welcome to parenting. You do things like bring a set of headphones in the car. You bring some creative CDs. You learn what the kids like. You make it so he doesn't have to listen to the snotty little brother. See? You make life more pleasant for him. Or you do things like, with our kids, we used to like read books. We had a set of, we'd read C.S. Lewis. I would make up hero stories. You engage the child who's not being snotty in something really interesting so that he's enjoying himself. Be a creative parent. It's way funner. Angela says, the other night my husband came downstairs angry at me. He turned on the light and demanded with steam coming out of his ears that I tell him what was wrong with me. He said, that's it? I've had enough of this. Why are you so angry? I looked at him, paused for a moment and said, no, I'm not going to talk about this now. I felt so calm because I no longer believed the lie that I have to give you what you want when you want it, and I'm wise enough now to know that no matter what I would have said, he wouldn't have been able to hear me. Brilliant. Just because somebody invites you to a gunfight doesn't mean you have to go. Listen to this. And yet all of our lives we've thought we did. People come up to us and go, I want to know why you... And then we think we have to actually answer that incredibly stupid question. They are inviting us to a gunfight. And so what do? We reach down and we, as they say in the old Western movies, we slap leather with them and we pull out our guns. Where did you think this was going to go? You don't have to tell him to stop. You just... Very cool. Let's see, we just did a child question. I want to do another one if somebody's got... Well, we may have to do another one. Here we are. My mother and younger sister had a falling out with my older sister. Mother and younger sister. Okay, follow this now. The dispute was so bad that my mother and younger sister are not talking, so she's the middle sister, are not talking to my older sister, nor is she talking to them. My younger sister says she doesn't care if she ever talks to her older sister ever again. My older sister says she doesn't care if she will probably talk to my mother again. But the last time this happened, she didn't talk to my mother for over a year. My mother says she loves her daughter, my older sister, but she doesn't like her. How can that be? I don't understand this. I still talk to my older sister, who has my mother's only grandchildren. They are grown daughters, 27 and 25. The younger granddaughter no longer keeps in touch with my mother because of this dispute. It's a regular family feud. Yeah, it sounds like, what's the name of that guy that has the show on TV? Used to be the mayor of Cincinnati. My mother and younger sister seem to be angry that I'm not on their side in this dispute. Yes, victims got to have you on their side. Many times when we are talking on the phone, they bring up this past dispute as if they are trying to convince my husband and I that they are justified in what they did. And we should also feel the way they do about my sister. of course. Victims gather people on their side like politicians gather votes. And there's a reason for that. Because if you're not sure about whether you're right, the more people who agree with you, the righter you are. I make myself angry when this happens. I can't help it. I try not to, but it's hard because I call them to talk about them and me and our relationship. Even though I still have a relationship with my older sister, can't I have a relationship with them too? From their actions, I make myself feel like they want me to pick them or my older sister, and I don't want to. What should I say to them? I really mostly try to avoid saying anything. I use avoidance big time here. By the way, there are only 3 sisters in our family. I'm the middle sister. All right, so it's very tempting to take sides because everybody's trying to get you to pick sides. So what do? You love and teach, and you do that with both parties. It's really pretty easy once you see that there's another alternative, because it looks like you're absolutely trapped. So here you've got, let's take your younger sister, for example. Your younger sister calls, and I've seen this in many families. Your younger sister calls, and she starts talking about your older sister. And she says, we'll call your older sister, I don't know, the Wicked Witch. And she says, the Wicked Witch goes, and she's terrible, and she does terrible things, and of course, the younger sister feels absolutely justified that the Wicked Witch is a hateful person. She's really certain of this. She feels like an absolutely justified victim. And she wants you to agree with her. And you feel like no matter what you say, you're doomed. If you agree with one, you're the enemy of the other one. If you agree with the other one, you're the enemy of the first one. So it's like you're doomed either way. No. Once you see the way out of this, it becomes a hoot. So instead of agreeing with either one, when your younger sister describes the horrible behavior of the older sister, let's say she says, well, she said something angry. Let's pick that behavior. Whatever it was, all of the bad behaviors that people describe are all getting and protecting behaviors. All of them. They all are. And so you say, you know, that must have been really painful for you. So the first thing you do is you listen. Notice you're not describing it as right or wrong. You're listening to your younger sister and saying, wow, that must have been really painful. Must have been hard for you. Something like that. And then you say, you know, in my experience, when people behave like that, now notice you're not saying she did it. You're just saying, in my experience, when people behave like that, invariably they're reacting to some kind of pain in their lives. And then you stop. You just wait. People have never heard that. Almost never have they ever heard an explanation like that. At which point your sister is going to be stunned. And she has almost no choice but to say to you, what do you mean? At which point you get to explain some principle of real love. You get to say, you know, when people act like that, they're responding to pain, and the pain that people feel almost invariably is they don't feel accepted in some way. And then, now she's got a choice. She can either feel really uncomfortable and change the subject, or she's going to have to ask you more. The more principles of real love you explain to people, they're either going to want to learn more, in which case they're going to quit feeling like victims, or they're going to really hate it that you're explaining the principles of real love. They're either changed by what you're saying, or they're really going to hate it that you're not acting like a victim with them. One of the two. And either way, you're going to quit hearing about this victim thing. Really? That's what's going to happen. Now, what if she just talks, because this will happen too sometimes. What if she just talks right over the top of you? And you say, you know, in my experience, when that happens, people are just responding to pain. And she just keeps talking. Then you wait for a little bit and you say it again. Now, there's another thing you can say. Sometimes you can interrupt by and just say, have you ever wondered why she acts like that? That's another thing you can say that's very innocent. And it doesn't make her wrong. You can just say, have you ever wondered why she did that? That's another thing you can say. And now you've put her in a position where she has to ask you, where she says, well, no, why? What you're doing is you're making her ask you the next question. And now you're teaching her. See how easy this is? By saying, have you ever wondered, or in my experience, people respond to pain, you put her in the position of asking you a question, and now you're teaching her a principle, and eventually the whining stops, either because she's learning or because she hates, because victims only whine to people who let them. Really. And you're letting her. She wouldn't keep this up if you weren't. To give you an example, people never keep whining to me. This is absolute proof that this technique works. Nobody ever comes whining to me more than once because I say things like this. And then they go, he's no fun to whine to, because they want to whine to somebody who whines with them. So if you try this, you're going to discover that it's quite effective. Let's see, Stephanie, remind me, what was your email about? Oh, yeah. Okay, Stephanie wrote me and said that she's got a daughter, 8, who keeps getting up in the middle of the night, not wanting to sleep. She gets up, gets dressed for school, and goes downstairs to watch TV. At least she gets dressed. I want to stop this behavior because I don't want her to be tired for school. I don't want her watching TV unsupervised because I worry about her watching crap. And because I don't want her getting into food she's not supposed to have, like chocolate chips. This morning she was up and ready for the day at 4:30 and was downstairs watching TV and eating a bowl of mashed up graham crackers. I made her go back to bed. Now remember that phrase, made her. After thinking about it, I realized that I was keeping her from experiencing the natural consequences of not sleeping, which is being tired throughout the day. Good for you. Good thinking. I know that that is a lesson she's going to have to learn in order for her to change her own behavior. I don't, however, feel I can let her learn on her own the natural consequences of watching inappropriate things on TV or eating unhealthy snacks. She's already got a bit of a weight problem and is teased at school because of it. I feel like it's my responsibility to monitor what she eats. I'm not really sure how to handle things from here. I'd appreciate some thoughts or ideas. Great question. Of course, it's about 5 questions, but all right, so there are a lot of things that children need to experience the natural consequences of. Some things are beyond their understanding. You allow children to make their own choices, read the parenting book, by the way, as they are able to make choices where they understand the consequences. Health is not one of them. Kids do not understand the consequences of making choices where it affects their health. So I would sit down with her and say, sweetie, we need to talk about the consequences of how you're eating, because it really makes a difference. If you're too heavy when you're a kid, it really affects your health when you're an adult. It's been shown that you die younger when you get older. Now, sweetie, I don't care that you're heavy. I don't love you less. It's critical that she not feel criticized for being heavy, because it just cripples a kid. But we need to talk about how you eat. And so you need to sit down and have a discussion about her diet and about how when she gets up in the morning, she has available to her celery, carrots, whatever, and you say, so I'm going to trust how you eat when you get up in the morning. Then you say, if I discover that you have not been eating healthy, then what we're going to do is we're going to have consequences for that. Then the unhealthy foods will be put up in a way where you can't get a hold of them. You will just have natural consequences for that. And if you have to lock them up, that's what you will do. See, first, you involve the child in the discussion about how you're going to handle it. You allow the child to make her own decisions about how she's going to eat carrots, etc. You have her get involved in the planning. Then there are consequences if she doesn't do it. You provide her healthier foods. Then you talk about television. First you say, you can get up as early as you want to. You want to get up at 2 in the morning? Go for it. But you can't watch television unsupervised. So here are the programs you can watch. You say, I trust you. Then, periodically, you get up at 4 in the morning and you see what she's watching. And if it turns out that she has violated your trust, then you say, then the consequence will be that the television will be locked. And that's very simple. You simply take the power cord, you take a little lock box, a change box, metal lock box, cut a little slit in it, put the power cord through it, and so that the plug is in the metal lock box, and you lock it up. Simple as pie. Now the kid can't plug in the television, and the television is useless. This comes from raising 7 children. So first you provide the child the opportunity to make their own wise choice with the food and the television. Then you provide consequences if they don't make the wise choices. But you do not send them back to bed. You provide them things like, like first, like we said, the wise television choices, books, whatever. You practice being a wiser parent by providing wiser choices before you tell them what not to do. You're starting to get the pattern. And then if you have more questions, we'll talk about this next week. I'm just trying to teach a pattern of the thing before we get into too many specifics. As parents, we tend to do way too much don't before we provide our children with the more choices of things to do and then consequences that follow. So, been very cool. We're going to please send some more questions. We will do again the thing where we talk to people live so that everybody can listen to that. And it's been an absolute delight, as usual. We'll see you guys next week on Tuesday, and I look forward to it. Love you. See you then.